What's going on, guys? It's Flash back with some more charts, another video. It's Tuesday, June 3rd, 3:48 p.m. Eastern. Gonna go through the regular cadence as I normally do today, guys. Drop me a like if you found this helpful, and let me know in the comments if you want to see anything in particular. But just gonna go through my charts here. So starting out on Bitcoin, typical rainbow wave, power law indicator, gets stronger every single day, as you guys know. What I added here is this index number from Colin Talks Crypto on his website. I think it's cbbi.info, but pretty much just tries to gauge how overheated or underheated the market is with a simple number. So according to him, we're at a 77 out of 100. Typically, if this gets to 90, 95, high 90s, that's typically at the top indicator. And so it aggregates a lot of different metrics and indicators to kind of help narrow things down to one number. So there's a lot of different ones out there. I'm just picking Collins because he's been so kind to give us the overlay with the M2, obviously, which Raoul Pal kind of introduced. But so we're at a 77 today, and so I don't want to necessarily rule out this banana zone that Raoul Pal talks a lot about. This rainbow wave indicator that you see in the background, for me, it's more of a general guideline in terms of where we're at in that traditional 4-year cycle. But as I've started to become aware, the business cycle and liquidity conditions really play a lot into Bitcoin's price movements, in addition, with the power law and the halving cycles and whatnot. So all that to say, I don't necessarily want to rule out higher targets, right? I think that they are applicable here. So, I've seen 400K, 500K Bitcoin. I'm not sure if 1 million is in the realm of possibility this cycle. Obviously, you can't rule it out, but it probably isn't my base case. But I think if we can kind of follow along with the, how overheated things are, keep track of liquidity, I think we'll be able to more or less know where we're at in any given cycle, for that matter. And just looking at the price of Bitcoin with the power law in the background on the regular scale as opposed to logarithmic. As I say in every video, this network is getting stronger every single day, and it's reflected in price action, and I think it's going to continue to play out that way. So just a good perspective to have in the back pocket. All right, now let's look at, this is just global M2. It's a general measure of liquidity in the system. I just kind of want to have this, keep track of it, to know, when we're expanding, when we're contracting, and I think just kind of keeping track of this on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, it'll help us out in the long run. So right now, obviously, as you've seen in my previous videos, we are expanding up and to the right, and it's not really showing any signs of slowing down, right? And when you think about it that way, I mean, that's when, if this keeps going, for whatever reason, that's when those really high price targets for Bitcoin can come into play. So again, just want to keep track of this. All right, let's keep moving along. So Bitcoin on the daily time frame, this is with global M2 overlaid in the background. Again, thank you to Colin Talks Crypto for providing the script. He added that average there at the bottom left of that table. So I just kind of cycle through the offsets and I try to find which one has that 30, 60, 90 average. That's the average that I'm looking at, and that's something that I added myself. So right now on Bitcoin, the 95-day offset has the highest 30, 60, 90-day average, 82.8%. And so again, I don't necessarily think this is tradable, and to find like legitimate price targets for this, I think is difficult. But just this gives me a sense of direction, where the market is likely headed in the next 30, 60, 90 days, for example. So this 95-day offset's looking pretty good. Again, if the overlay, you can move it around, you can manipulate it so it looks better or it looks worse. I'm just trying to match it up, what catches my eye, in the last year or two. And the 95-day offset overlaid like this, I'm trying to connect, this low to these lows to these lows. So generally speaking, I'm not sure if this 200K price point is legitimate or not, but I do think, this is the general direction, right? And so I've also, come to the conclusion that gold tracks liquidity conditions in real time, depending on a lot of different things. But right now, I think it is tracking because it's lining up with M2. And so actually, that 30, 60, 90-day average is 91.7% overlaid on Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's actually more so following the price of gold than it is global M2. And you can see it, in the chart. It's really, really lining up here nicely recently. And then when we put both of them on the chart, again, directionally up and to the right, I think we can all conclude that. So just this is just Bitcoin on the daily time frame with my classic drawings and whatnot from just recent videos. But this is kind of like my artwork for the day. I kind of want to print this out and hang it on my wall. If that sounds so crazy, but yeah, it's just kind of beautiful price action. I've been tracking this. We wanted to break out of that domed consolidation, which we did, and then I was kind of anticipating us finding some sort of channel that will be riding up and to the right, and it looks like we're really doing that beautifully. So it's just kind of nice to see and re-emphasize at least my perspective right now. All right, now let's get into Bitcoin measured in gold. I think this is the weekly time frame, but really what I wanted to point out here is this measured move, from this recent cup or accumulation, cup and handle, whatever you want to call it. If we bring it from the bottom here to the top here and we measure it up and we maybe match the same angle that we have in the past, this brings us to a ratio of about 131, right? So if you take the price of gold, say $4,000, right, and you multiply that by 131, 4,000 times 131, you get a price of 524,000. So Bitcoin measured in gold is pointing to a price target of 520K again, which is interesting, using ratios to determine price targets. Again, that's how you can kind of get those higher price targets. So just very interesting. All right, here's a newer chart I've been working with. The white line is Bitcoin. The green line is the price of gold pushed forward by 92 days. And then the orange line is MSTR pushed forward by, I think it's 8 or 9 days. But as you can see, MSTR is starting to curl up here. This is exactly what we wanted to see. So I just think this is kind of interesting to follow along. All right, let's get into MSTR, the meat and potatoes. This is what everyone's here for. 64-day offset with the global M2 has a short-term average of about 58.5%. So a little bit, again, it's deviated recently, but if you watch my last video, I was kind of looking for this to start rounding out and making its way back to the upside. And it looks to me that is kind of what it's doing. If we overlay the price of gold, again, a stronger offset, right? 79.5% short-term average. And again, starting to curl up and follow gold as well. If we overlay both of them, again, you can kind of manipulate this to make it look better than it is, or I'm just trying to kind of, again, whatever catches my eye. I think this looks pretty good generally. So up and to the right we go, I think. And so here's, again, the same chart with, the upper and lower bands that I've put on, and per MicroStrategist's ballistic acceleration model, 150K Bitcoin equals about 1100 for MSTR. So do I think we get to 1100 by middle July, August, September? I think it's possible, right? I mean, I can't rule it out. We can maybe be a little bit more conservative, but again, I do think we're going up and to the right. And so again, if I reference my last video, market participants they're creating narratives to describe the liquidity conditions from about 90 days ago, right? So, a week or two ago, everyone was complaining, hey, strategy isn't showing proof of reserves, or sailors hitting the ATM too hard. And, we saw that little dip in price action. But again, you had that dip in global liquidity. And so over the weekend, I was like, all right, what's the news going to be that maybe releases MSTR, makes it go to the upside to follow the liquidity narrative, right? And so if we look at that, on June 1, Michael Saylor tweeted out, "Orange is my preferred color, capital P, capital C." And they also released the launch of Stride, STRD, a new perpetual preferred stock offering. If you go into the period of May 26 to June 1, they actually did not issue any common stock. It was all via Strike and Strife. So They want to prove that, hey, they're going to maybe hold off on the ATM, the common stock ATM, right? They're adding a new preferred option, and this is just classic. Like, oh, and then in the video in the bottom right, I put that's on my X, on my Twitter. Saylor talks about, we can buy back the stock below if the MNAV goes below 1. So I just think like this is that kind of that news that I'm talking about. That's going to be like, oh, yep, MSTR was, we should have been in it all along. It's going to go to the moon. We freaked out for nothing, right? But it's, again, I just fall back on, okay, let's follow the money, follow liquidity, right? And so again, how do we get to $1,100? Well, a couple big bull flags here in this channel, potential bull flags, right? And a measured move from here overlaid onto here, that brings us exactly to 1,100. So is it going to follow it one for one? I'm not sure, but again, if we zoom out a little bit, I think that $1,100 price point by midsummer could be possible, right? So if we zoom back in, I was looking at that falling wedge on the 30-minute time frame. Here's this next image from captured today before close. Looks like we did break out. It also looks a little bit like a spring if you look at this kind of like from a Wyckoff perspective. It is the 30-minute time frame, so I wouldn't put any credence into that. But we kind of had maybe a little fake out down here, and we want to get back up here and break out of this green little channel and ride up this blue channel, right? So if we bring liquidity back into the mix, again, I was looking for that low because there was a low in liquidity in M2. There's a low in gold right where MSTR was. And I'm like, okay, this is likely going to be the low. So, if we connect the top price action and we drag it down to this low, that creates this potential channel that we could be in for the foreseeable future. And right, that's my hope. Another looking, this indicator, distance percentage from the moving average, this is on the 4 hour. I was looking for this breakout. We got this breakout. So I do think energy now is released to the upside. There's a little bit more fresh air for MSTR to continue higher. You accompany that with M2 liquidity in gold and the news, right, that recently dropped. I think MSTR is positioned to go higher. All right, then a couple more charts. MSTR measured in gold. I've referenced this one several times, but a big accumulation cup and handle with higher price targets. And you can kind of see we're kind of consolidating into a triangle formation here. I think this is bullish. MSTR measured in the S&P 500. I'm still kind of working on this chart, but you can see like these rounded bottom, rounded accumulation structures that, again, just people continue to load up, it looks like, right? And so MSTR should continue outperforming the S&P 500. MSTR measured in the NASDAQ, very similar. Cup, handle, and again, I think we go higher, guys. And so that also leads me in, MSTR measured in the S&P 500, MSTR measured in the NASDAQ, like it all looks so bullish. And then MSTR measured in Bitcoin, it looks pretty similar, right? I mean, you have these, again, accumulation structures that I think are just going to push this thing to the upside. So if we zoom in just a little bit more, MSTR measured in Bitcoin on the 12 hour, this is the bounce that we needed, that we wanted to see. If MSTR is really going to make this crazy run, we want to be outperforming Bitcoin. So still have some work to do. We still want to get beyond that orange trend line, and then we want to crack these light blue kind of resistances, which I think is 0.0042. So if we can get above that and head into the summer above this, again, I think there will be fresh air for us to get up here potentially, right? And so I'll keep tracking this for you guys. Ultimately, I hope you guys found this helpful. Drop me a like if you did, and I'll see you in the next one.